And I always feel like we're staring at... Okay, you're on.
Hey, welcome back to Springer Homestead for another chat on a Wednesday evening. So this week, we kind of had a lot of things to talk about. Really, a lot of things going on around here with the main subject of gaining or maximizing production of really kind of everything from animals to, I guess, vegetables or your garden or just maximizing life. How about that? So
Sure.
let's start with what's going on around here before we dive into the maximizing piece.
Yeah, so kind of an update on what's going on around here. We had 2 people on, now we have none, so that's kind of interesting. Just kind of working around the farm a little bit. Kanan got my cone spreader all cleaned up and back to working. We think my dad hasn't used it in well over a decade. He actually bought this cone spreader for the tractor back when I was in very early high school, so this thing's kind of old. But it's been sitting around. We're going to use it to spread rabbit manure. So a cone spreader is really used for seed and bagged manure. So it's kind of it's a cone, so that the output is kind of small. I'd been looking for a manure spreader for a long time, and it finally occurred to me that everything we have around here uses kind of a fine, produces a fine manure. So we're going to go ahead and try to use the cone spreader and see how that works. But it was rusted. Yeah. Solid.
Yes. Woo. Took a lot to get that rust out of there.
Yeah, when we got it from Dad, he said, well, I'd replaced parts on it before. You might have to replace parts again. So Kanan spent a whole lot of time out there with some WD-40 and it sounded like a hammer.
I came back. I went out there with my standard bag of tools, of sockets, and some hammers, and I think I came back to the garage 3 different times to get more tools because I needed stuff. And what it ended up being was a lot of WD-40. It ended up being a ball joint separator of all things. Yeah. Well, I should say that. It was a tie rod separator. It's got the fork you kind of stick between and you pound it with a hammer. That was the pounding. The sharp tip on those actually went between a couple pieces and finally broke loose the rust.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a booger. It's like 3 layers of metal, all kind of just coagulated in rust and fertilizer and.
Yeah, cone spreaders are notorious about the assembly kind of rusting together just because fertilizer is really corrosive. The big thing with ours is Dad bought it in Central Oregon, used it, then moved it over to the valley, and then moved it up to Southern Washington. So it got a lot more weather. And then we've had it sitting outside. We've had it since the fall. So she's up, she's working, and we're going to take it out probably this next week for a maiden voyage. It's like I said, we're gonna try and toss rabbit manure with it because it should be small enough to fit through the hopper. How ironic.
Yes.
Hopper beans for the hopper. Yeah. And try and do some fertilizing in some of these upcoming goat pens and over on the 40. Rather than compost it all, the compost pile is still 8 feet tall and about 35 feet long. So
yeah, there's plenty over there to scoop up and dump out.
Yeah, I've got plenty of compost out there. So that's been a big deal. I got the cattle panel greenhouse finally completely cleaned out. That was kind of a mess. And 23 tomato plants went in. 2 of them this morning are not looking well. But I still have about 70 more to go. So we may have to pull some out and replace them. I did go get a few pepper plants at the store today. Another thing that happened, so we went and bought some more fencing today. We have decided to do some more fencing further back on the property in goat fencing, which we had not planned to do. I don't know if anyone's looked at the price of goat fencing. So we had gotten some last fall at about $2.79 a roll. This is the Red Brand 48-inch tall 4x4 holes, 330-foot long rolls. I like the red brand because it's a heavier fence than the off brand that our coastal carries. So we had gotten it like 279, 289, something like that. It was on sale this spring at $269. So we went in and bought a whole bunch. Somewhere in all that, because I did an online order, then they didn't have it. They brought it in. Somewhere in there, Coastal issued me a rain check.
Mm-hmm.
This is back like March, April-ish. Issued me a rain check for it, and they had never had it in again. So I got a call 2 days ago that my fence was in. And at first I was like, no, I already bought fence. And the kid who left me the message says, we're going to go ahead and honor the $269.99 price if you still want it. But you need to get in here and get it for 4 rolls of it. So we had just been talking about this, and I thought, hey, maybe we'll do that. So I went online to see, because I thought, well, let's see how much we're really saving. Because if it's not much, we'll wait. That stuff is up to $379. So we were saving $110 a roll. So you can bet your sweet behind we put the trailer on and moseyed on into the coastal today and got the four rolls that they had saved for me off of this rain check.
Mm-hmm.
So there is more fencing in our future. Over the weekend on Sunday, we also got the auger set up, dug a whole bunch of holes. So there's fencing coming, fencing to do.
Yeah.
So some videos on fencing coming up. I hate fencing, not gonna lie, absolutely hate it. And part of it's gonna really suck because we're going over an existing barbed wire fence. So yeah, it's gonna be kind of a pain. But we did get some of the holes drilled. About
15.
Well, 15 started. There was about 4 that didn't really make it. We're going to have to soak them down with water and try and get them going. But yeah, so that's kind of the big stuff.
Yeah.
I'm back to breeding rabbits. We put that off a little bit because of Bordetella and then being sick. So we're back to getting the bunny barn going again. And that's... I think that's...
you know what? I got a message this morning. I got a phone call this morning. I was so happy to get, and it was the trucking company letting me know that they are going to meet me tomorrow between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. to deliver our solar batteries. That saga has been going on a month now, trying to get those, which tomorrow could be the end of it. They're at least in our hands. So tomorrow morning, I will, after I get out of work at 10, I'll probably do my morning chores. I need to take off one of the jumper leads off of these solar batteries now, and I need to head into town, and I need to get a positive and a negative of those made. Now they're probably an inch in diameter, so they're thick, heavy wire. I don't know if they're aught or I can't remember what size they are, but I need to get 2 of those made, one positive, one negative, to be able to attach a 3rd string of batteries together, get those home. We're still trying to decide how we're going to unload them. We need to obviously use a tractor. They're 130 pounds a piece, and we're going to use a tractor to do that. We just can't decide if we want to go get the actual forks for the tractor and switch the bucket to the tractor, or just use the clamp-ons and only move 3 or 4 batteries at a time. We haven't decided that yet, and it's not something that has to be done now, but I tell you what, this could be the weekend we get back to our independence. I feel like half the time every night we have to run the generator for about an hour. So we're, thankfully have a diesel generator that's got too many hours on it now. It's definitely going to need an oil change soon.
Yeah.
Now that I've used up basically every last bit of production of it, trying to get the everything charged every night.
Very true. So a couple of things I just thought of that I didn't mention. On the American front, for the people who have been waiting on American rabbits, everything I was getting this spring has been girls. It's crazy. I had a small litter of 2 girls, another small litter of 2 girls, a litter of 5 that is 4 girls and a buck, and the buck I'm not crazy about, and the litter of I think we're down to 5 that I took over to a girlfriend to foster for me. Looks to be either all girls or mostly girls and one buck. Um, However, one of the does did come through for me. I can't think of what her name is. Linnea, I think, has out of her 8, we got 5 bucks, 3 girls. So finally, we've got some bucks. We can start making some pairs. And then I've got a whole bunch more bred. And then there are 2 new litters in there. On top of that, Matthew asked, am I vaccinating for RHDV2? No, I am not. One, I feel like this is a disease that we're going to have to learn to live with. Vaccinating is not really the answer, at least not when you have a barn the size of ours. We're cutting back and we're still going to have around 70 breeders. And so far, everything I've seen is about $25 to $40 a rabbit. So that's way out of my ballpark. The other thing is my meat buyer will not buy from me if I vaccinate my herd. There has been absolutely no studies done on whether or not it's safe to use for meat rabbits. Even though it doesn't, they're saying that no immunity passes to the offspring. That doesn't mean that some kind of chemical residue doesn't pass to the offspring. So my buyer won't buy from me until it's been concluded to be safe, and I've looked and there are absolutely no studies in the works. The other thing is I talked to a couple people in Europe who have been using this, and most of the breeders in Europe don't use it because while they're not seeing any real effect in the initial animals that are vaccinated, they have seen decreased fertility rates or even sterility in the offspring of vaccinated rabbits. And yeah, that's not a risk I'm willing to take. So we will not be vaccinating. We're doing whatever biosecurity we can. There is a new case in the county next to us. They found it in, I think it's 3 or 4 jackrabbits. So yes, it's here. Yes, it's closer. I mean, it's one of those things where it was found in Lapine, which is about 2 hours north of us. It's been found down in Lakeview or near in Lake County, probably about 2 hours to the east of us. I have not seen a jackrabbit or even a cottontail on the farm in a year. So do I think it's here? I do. We're just trying to do the best we can and try and be productive and have good biosecurity and just, try and be diligent on it. It's just kind of the way it is right now. So, yeah, not going to be vaccinating. I know lots of people who have, and if that's what you want to do, there's no harm in that. You just need to understand that it's a vaccine, it's a booster, and then every year it has to be boosted again. So just know it's kind of a, once you sign up for it, it's kind of an ongoing thing.
Yep.
So, I guess it's working. It's kind of being slow.
Yeah.
And it's weird that we were getting a ton of comments and now we're getting nothing. So I'm not sure if it's really working or not. But
I don't know.
Anything else you got?
I'm trying to think of all the stuff I've worked on this week. It's been like every day I've had to work on something different. No, I can't think of anything really. I mean, we got the fencing, batteries are tomorrow, which means probably Friday will be battery day, getting everything situated and get the new box built and or the size adjust and
all that fun stuff.
Oh yeah, all that fun stuff. Trying to get everything reprogrammed for new batteries. I've got it so handicapped just to keep everything going. I'm gonna have to change half the settings for the type of batteries, and then different size of battery bank than I have now, and I mean it'll be interesting though. Hopefully, I don't have to run the generator anymore every night trying to get these things charged. And we adjusted half of our solar panels yesterday.
We did.
So
we put them on a summer setting.
Yeah, we normally have adjusted. There's 4 sets of them that are on a slight swivel, so they go up and down to adjust for the angle. In the summer, we put them more flat to adjust for the sun's position and the way it goes across. And in the winter, we adjust them down. So this year, we normally every year past we have always adjusted them fully up, all 4 sets going up into a summer setting. This year we're going to try doing just half of the far set, I guess, for the sun's path. The farthest 2 sets, or the farthest half, are going to be on summer, and then we're going to leave the nearest 2 on winter, and just see how much of a difference that makes.
Oh, there we go. That's a little better.
Yeah. So otherwise, it's everything's rolling along. I mean, it's a lot of little projects here and there, and hopefully the farm kind of gets calmed down a little bit. It seems like just everything's hit so much in the last 3 weeks, between solar and projects and gardening, and it's just that time of year where
Oh yeah,
it's never a dull moment around here. There's always something to go work on because we always have projects in the works.
yeah, for sure. And I'm trying to get the garden salvaged for the year.
Yeah.
There's some cold crops that I'm just not going to get in because I really feel like I missed the window on it, and just that whole bout of being sick. So, oh well, we're just going to cut our losses and move on with it and kind of see what we can get. But okay, so let's talk about maximizing production. So this has been a topic that I am seeing a lot in some of my groups, some of my sustainability groups, homesteading groups, prepping groups, and just general rabbit groups. And this kind of applies to everything. And it's people going to the feed store and being a little shell shocked, right? Prices are going up. We talked about that, I think, repeatedly on here over and over again about how much they're going up. Bird feed, rabbit feed, all of it's going up. So, that's causing a lot of people to really look and say, yeah, I need to downsize. But most people don't know where to start, right? And this is where, if you're breeding for meat, unfortunately, you have to really make some tough choices. Maybe your favorite rabbit is not a good producer. And if you're serious about trying to cut back, you might really have to be looking at who needs to go. So this is the kind of moment that, we've talked before about keeping rabbits, and keeping good records, and how every litter you should be writing down, not only for your doe but also your buck, is how many offspring are they having. How many are born, how many are actually making it all the way to weaning. It's kind of important to know. I don't worry about making it all the way to weaning necessarily on my bucks, but I am worried about that on my does, because that tells me what kind of mom she is. For instance, I have a doe that produces 9 babies every single litter and raises 3. And I'm not kidding. Every litter so far, and she's on litter number 3 or 4. She will literally start throwing them out of the nest box until she gets down to 3, and then she raises them. She does a great job. They're fat. They're nice looking rabbits. But she's a horrible mother. She just is. So guess who is on the chopping block for the next round of cutbacks, most likely? I've been trying to hold on to this doe because she came from some really good breeders out in North Carolina, but I'm really having a hard time with her. And the one daughter that I kept is already just completed strike 2, and that means that she decided that her nest box is hers and babies belong on the wire. So she's also on the list, unfortunately. But when you're going through stuff, I'll let you have that. Not that I'm seeing anything, but when you're going through stuff, it's not just rabbits, it's also chickens. You need to kind of be looking at it. If you've got a flock of hens, and you know for a fact that one is giving you 3 eggs and the other one is giving you 7, and somebody's got to go, it's probably the one producing 3.
Yeah.
Unless there's some marvelous aspect to her, like maybe she's an incredible meat chicken and you need that kind of stuff. So I know things are tough everywhere, and I know it's no fun to talk about cutting back.
Yeah.
But it is something that I think a lot of us are starting to look at. I know show breeders are in particular. A lot of my friends have cut way, way, way back. And it's an uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable mostly because for most of us, we know that the market is tough right now. Really, really tough. We were in our coastal today, and the board the sailboard in the back is as full as we have ever seen it, of everything from ducks to chickens to Great Pyrenees dogs, border collies, donkeys, you name it, of people basically figuring out that they can't support the farm that they had, right? Um, so unfortunately, when you're going through and you're making these tough choices, honestly, you're probably going to have to put them in freezer camp. It's very, very difficult to find a buyer right now, and I don't recommend to any. And again, I know this is tough when it's been a breeder and you think, I've got time and energy into this. I would urge everybody to be really, really careful to not don't give the farm away, if that makes sense. You're better off butchering that rabbit and putting it in the freezer than selling it for way under value. And the reason I say that is uh, people remember, and I know this because it's happened to me before. When I used to sell some of my rabbits for 30 and 35 bucks, I still to this day get people who come back 5 years later or 6 years later and say, well, what do you mean they start at 75? I bought one from you 5 years ago for 30 bucks. Well, we're not the same caliber that we used to be. Feed costs aren't the same. And as those things have changed, that means the pricing has changed. So be very careful about giving the farm away for way too cheap. Keep your prices what they are, and if they don't sell, send them to the freezer. I mean, I hate to say that, and that's been something that's happened to us a lot here lately, and we're just kind of rolling with it. I mean, what else can you do? At some point, you have to protect your pricing because it will come back. I don't know if it's going to come back next year. I don't know if it's going to come back the year after. I'm hearing that it's not bad everywhere, but I am also hearing that it's bad in a lot of places. So, what kind of comments are we getting, boss?
Elijah just said there's a good number of people having issues with litters this year, or it sounds like there are.
You know, there are, that's been a big thing out here too. And I don't know what is going on with it. Usually, when you see a rash of litter issues, it tends to be feed related, but it's happening to a lot of people across all different feeds and all different breeds. And we've had some funky stuff this year. Like you said, I lost that one doe that hemorrhaged out, which is really strange on a doe it was only her second litter. And I've had some weird, does that normally throw me 9 like produce 2, and just some oddball stuff. I even had a couple of babies that flat out didn't grow, and I've never had that problem before either. I know in our county in particular, we've had a lot of problems with, like right now, all the kids are securing 4-H rabbits. And there's very few to go around. And that's not only because so many people got out, but just Joe's missing and not taking. And we attribute that here a lot of times to our really weird weather, because we've been up and we've been down and we've been up and we've been down. And what happens is rabbits start to go into a molt and then stop and start and start and stop again. When they're molting, a lot of times they won't breed. It drops their hormone levels really low while they recycle those nutrients elsewhere. And I've seen that that's happening in some other parts of the country too. So I'm wondering if some of the fertility issues that we're seeing is temperature, is just wild climate or wild temperature, wild weather, whatever you want to call it this spring. What was it, the next one?
So Chris is asking, he uses an open pen community and a buck is very persistent. Everybody seems in good health, so is there a way to get the does interested in breeding?
An open pen community.
I think he's probably just doing a community raised.
That sounds like, a colony. I can't stand colonies, and we've talked about this before. It's an accident waiting to happen. There is something where does will, because they're around the buck so much, their hormone levels will drop, and they'll take no interest. He basically becomes one of the girls, and they won't breed to him. We see this in other species. So a good example of this is we actually years ago when we lived in Tennessee had a llama buck that we ran with the girls all the time. The first month that he was in there, he settled half the herd. No other doe or no other female ever bred to him again. He just got, remember, Spats lived in there for years. Yeah. And the thing is it becomes a platonic relationship is the best way that I can describe this. And people don't think that animals do this, but they really do. Basically, he just becomes another member of the herd, especially in a buck that can be dominated by the dominant female. Once she has kind of put him in his place, he loses all his power. You're not going to get them breeding again, most likely. You're going to have to pull the buck out and probably try and reintroduce. I would strongly recommend that you go to a different system, though. Especially with RHDV2 out, you're asking for trouble. You really are asking for trouble. The other thing you can do is just get another buck and throw it in there and see if that does anything. You'll have to pull the first buck out, otherwise your bucks will fight. But once they've gotten used to a buck like that, now he's been in there and his scent is everywhere, so it's not even a matter that you can pull him out and put him back in. It may work, but I wouldn't count on it. Or it could just be that the does aren't interested. And again, that could be if they're molting. I mean, that could be the other thing.
Yeah.
What am I missing?
Nothing really.
Okay.
Elijah said rabbits are blowing coats at the end of May, and yeah, I think we've had the same. I mean, it's been such a weird year for really everything.
My rabbits are still molting. So we started in, well, gosh, they started molting before I went to California State in March. And we started, and we got most of the way through a molt. We started getting some good fur in. We got really cold again. And then we started getting really warm. So they molted again, which was kind of weird. And then we got really cold again, and they've held on. And now I see I've got rabbits molting again now that we're getting hot. Yeah. And so that completely screws with hormone levels and nutritional levels. So it's kind of it's such a catch-22, and you can't stop them. I mean, the only way to stop them is to try and get some consistency of temperature. And for most people, that's really, really hard. Like, I've got mine in a building, and it's still uber hard to try and keep them at any kind of a consistent level. So getting back to our conversation about consistency and culling for production. So like I said, one of the first things I'm looking at is how many offspring are my rabbits putting out. With my does, how many are they raising? The next piece of that puzzle is how fast are these babies growing? And this is where my Harlequins really start to lose out in the barn. The Harlequins just don't grow that fast. You got to remember, these are a rabbit that at mature weight, bucks start at 6.5 pounds. So to get them to 5 pounds sometimes takes 4.5 months. But within the spec of Harlequins, we are looking to see who really grows slow and who doesn't. Because that does matter. When you're looking at cutting back and going to good production animals, not only is how many they're producing, but what kind of return rate are you getting on them? So how fast are they growing? And that's something that most people aren't keeping up with, myself included right now. I can kind of walk through the barn and tell you whose babies grow the slowest, because most of my does have had multiple litters, and I kind of have a baseline. When you've consistently kept 20 to 40 does, you pretty much get a good idea for it. But there's two sides to that, right? So the growth rate is mom and dad. So good records here. And if you're not doing this right now, and you think you're going to have to cut back later this year, it's worth starting to do that now. And that's weighing them at 6, 8, 10, 12, all the way up to whatever butcher weight is, and seeing where they're coming in, and actually taking the time to weigh them and try and keep an eye on your litters. because as feed gets more expensive, it does not do you any good to keep the doe that cannot get her babies to 5 pounds, especially if you're doing a breed like New Zealand or cow. If you can't get them to 5 pounds by 12 weeks, you really need to look for better stock. It's kind of unfortunate, but that's how we are in the Americans. My Americans have to hit 5 pounds no later than 12 weeks, and most of my bigger lines actually hit it at 8. But it's an important thing to be looking at. That goes for everything. So like I was saying, chickens are kind of the same thing. Is how are you doing with it? And if your rooster is over, like, I'm going to say over 3 years old, that's when we start to see fertility drop. And you can replace him, you may replace him. I know a lot of people keep old hens around because they're kind of fun and all that, but realistically, when she's past 3, I know a lot of people butcher it too, but we've had good luck with breeds all the way into the 3 and some, on occasion 4. But it's probably time to start cutting those out. I mean, realistically, replacing them with younger layers. The big thing I do stress is in rabbits, if you're going to be replacing with a younger, like a daughter or whatever, do try and keep mom around until the daughter has reproduced, because that's happened to me where I've gotten rid of a mother and then the daughter didn't wasn't the mother that her mother was, kind of thing. But older stock, unfortunately, is probably on the chopping block right now. We're starting to really look at it in our goats, even. I'm going back through and I'm looking at who's had kidding problems, who's consistently only given me a single, and how was that single. It's we're really buck heavy this year. That doesn't overly bother me, but I want to see nice big full bucks. And if I'm not getting that, one doe in particular I'm looking at throws really scrawny little bucks. Well, if I have to use those for meat animals because the market seems to be kind of disintegrating on everything, I don't want scrawny bucks. I want nice big bucks. One of my favorite does this year is having some kind of problem with one side of her bag. That's kind of counting against her. There's another doe that rejected her kids this year. Well, this is her second time having trouble. She lost her first set of kids. She raised her last set of kids fine, but this time one died and she rejected the other one. So she's going this year. I've decided that she's going to go ahead and be leaving us, whether that means an auction or a freezer camp or whatever it is. Because at this point, I'm not getting good enough production to justify the 35% higher feed bill for hay this year. It's just kind of the way things are.
Elijah said that he's his feed for rabbits went up to $19 a bag, so he had to switch brands to one that's $14 a bag. Not as good a feed, but since I don't actively breed, it's working out okay.
That's a bummer. I haven't bought feed since April. I want to say April.
Yeah.
But I expect this next load to be higher. And we're kind of in the same boat. We've been happy with the feed. We've been on this feed for 2 years. And it's steadily risen. I've kept an eye on the other brands that we can get in town, and for the most part, they're all still higher. So we'll probably stick with what we've got. But as feed goes up, the number of bunnies in Nikki's barn goes down. Because I have to justify this all out, and it's not easy to keep 80 some odd rabbits if the feed is costing more money. So we're cutting back.
I don't think we're doing that all over the place. I mean, I can't think of anything on the farm that where costs significantly gone up this year that we haven't had to start having these tough conversations of we might have to cut back. I mean, we talked about I think the last live stream we did, we talked about the hay, and it was $900 more this year. And we had to have the conversation of like, well, where we get $900 out of? What's coming? We're either not buying something that we plan to because of that, or we've got to cut out other animals or birds or anything else to get that $900 available. Because it's while the thing I've had to really keep in my mind is that we can always go make more money. That's not a problem, but
right now. It's not a problem right now.
Right. It's not a problem right now. If I wanted to go work more for my current job, if I said, hey, would you want me to work another 2 hours a day to make more money? I can make that $900 back, somewhat quickly. But what that also does means is that I get 2 hours less on the farm per day of something, whether it's, getting a cone spreader back together that, the goal is to have that done by May 1st, and it's July 5th or June 15th when I got it done. The goal is to have the trailer. I mentioned the last live stream. It took me probably 2 hours total, start to finish, to get that trailer hooked up, brought back down to our storage shed, cleaned out, but it took me 4 days. If I would have lost 2 hours per day on the farm, the trailer would probably be still sitting down there. I don't know that I'd have it ready to go. So it's always a balance. It's like,
But on top of that, not everybody's in the same boat. A lot of people are already working 40 hours to get where they're at.
Right. And it's not like you can just go, well, I guess I'll go get another part-time job away from the homestead to be able to afford everything I want to keep. It's not that easy. I mean, it's a hard one.
Yeah. So, like one of the big conversation items around here right now is, do we cut back enough? So the farm is always, we've been big enough that the animals help support themselves, right? We run about 30 head of goats. The goat offspring every year pays for most of the hay. Like I said, we run around 80 rabbits, and we've cut way back. Their offspring help buy the feed. The turkey poults that we hatch out of our turkey eggs every year usually pay for the turkeys, the chicken, blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm growing. It's getting to the point where the market is so bad right now and feed prices are so high that we're seriously looking at cutting back to bare minimums to what do we need to provide for us and still have a good enough base that if the market turns around next year, we can rebuild.
Right.
And so that's kind of where we're at right now. But you have to be realistic about, and this is where we all struggle a little bit as homesteaders, is it's a really fine line between what is necessary and what do you have just because you enjoy it. And it's really a time to start looking at maximizing production. So who produces the best offspring, who produces offspring that grow well, who produces offspring that reproduces well. I mean, that's kind of the other thing. It doesn't do you any good if your doe has 9 babies every single time, but half of her offspring are terrible mothers. That's not helpful. So, and I've had to look at that, like how many offspring have I sold out of some of these rabbits? How many daughters or sons have I retained? That kind of stuff. And I'm doing the same thing, believe it or not, out of the birds. I know which turkeys we've kept stuff back from. I know which ones usually are good layers. I also know that quite a few of my pens are 6 and 7 years old. So they're out of here this year. Means I'm going to be butchering a lot of really old, tough birds this fall.
A lot of ground turkey in the future.
But that's I mean, what else can you do, kind of thing, if we're not getting the fertility that we had.
If they're not producing on a homestead front that way, they become pets. I mean, that's just the real deal of it. They become pets, and it's hard to justify keep going, because the more things you retire out and you can't afford to replace them back as production, you become a retirement community for all your old broken down animals.
And that's happened to me a little bit.
I think it happens to everybody though.
So what am I missing?
So Patriots Rabbitry asked about the best way to switch feeds from one feed to another. What do you like?
Okay. I like to go 50-50 if I can, and then blend out for 2 weeks. That's ideal. If they're really close feeds, or if I can't do that, because that's happened to me. Like one time we got vitamin D toxicity and we had to make a really sudden jump. What we did is we pulled all feed. We fed nothing but hay for a week to kind of palate cleanse, and then we started adding the feed back in. And it took me, I added the feed back in over about a week and a half, watching for any weird signs of diarrhea or anything like that. So it was like, if I remember right, we did a quarter ration for 2 days. If everything went well, we went up to a half ration for 2 or 3 days, and we went up to a 3/4 ration, and then by the time we hit like a week, we were at a full ration. And for the first week that I fed that, because if you've watched very much, you know I'm not a big hay feeder. But the first week after you get them on the new feed, at least the first week, make sure that they're getting hay. That'll kind of help with any issues that they might have. The biggest problem you run into when you transition to a new feed is sometimes rabbits just won't eat it. So if you can blend, that's always helpful. But if you've got to go cold turkey, you can. I mean, it's happened to me once or twice. So.
Yeah. Well, we've done it before where we've gone into our favorite store and they're like, the mill had a fire and we don't have any feed. All we have is this other brand, and it's. I mean, what are you gonna do? They need to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some dive right in as something different and exciting. Some basically take it out and they throw it out or throw it back at you and they're like, "We're not eating this."
I think some rabbits look at you and think that you're trying to kill them. I'm convinced. Like they're suspicious of everything.
Yeah.
So very helpful if you can blend your old feed with your new feed. If you can't, just lots of hay. Lots and lots of hay.
Yeah.
That'll kind of help move things along. What else we got?
Other than Elijah lost a goat doe 36 hours after kidding twins.
Oh.
And the other one he has never took. So his main milker got a break this year. So he wasn't ready to lose her. She was 7, which.
Yeah, that's kind of young still.
Yeah, I mean that's still got. I mean our general rule around here is, they either produce every year until they can't, or until they hit about 10, and it seems like those tend to be right around the same place. 10 years old is probably when we stop, or when they start to struggle.
Yeah, we've only lost one doe, but we did lose one doe after kidding 1 year. Gosh, she was probably only about a 4-year-old doe.
Daisy, right?
Yeah, that was Daisy. So it happens.
That's right.
It
yeah,
sucks.
I forgot about that.
That sucks. But yeah, that was the first time we did bottle babies, is because we lost a doe.
Yeah.
So that's a bummer, especially if it's a main milker. Like I was saying, the one doe that I had planned to milk this year is the one that's got an udder issue. So it's okay. I've got a better, friendlier doe.
Yeah.
She can be kind of cantankerous. I've got a friendlier doe that I'm going to use instead. But yeah, it's kind of, we've had a couple does skip this year too, which was kind of really odd for us. Younger does that did not take this year. So, in the one pen in particular, where we had what looks like 2 does skip, we know, at least I feel pretty confident it was a buck issue. We actually ended up losing that buck about 6-8 weeks into the breeding season, and we think it was probably urinary calculi kind of issue. So not overly surprised that he didn't settle everybody. It bummed, because I wanted the biggest selection I could to replace him, but yeah, he was from really good dairy lines. He was from an actual dairy farm, but kind of the way it works.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the replacement, the one that Nikki has selected as his replacement, that will have to obviously grow him for 2 years to get there, but he's a looker.
He's a looker.
We can't just agree on the name for him. He is black, but then he has the stripes down the face that a Nubian should, and he also has like knee-high socks on every
He's beautiful.
leg. They're kind of a cream color.
Yeah, he's kind of a creamy tan color where his markings are. He's jet black everywhere else. He's beautiful.
I call him knees, but
the biggest problem I have with him is he's beautiful, but he is not the biggest buck in the group.
No.
And so I've been kind of torn, because when you're looking at production, like I said, you don't want skinny bucklings down the road, especially if you end up having to eat them at all.
Who would you say is the biggest? Wallace?
Yes, it's terms of overall girth.
Yeah, but Wallace is one of my bottle babies, and if you saw the update from Saturday, he was the one that was jumping and hitting me at the end there when I was saying he was on steroids. He's a bottle baby, and he chugs a bottle of milk by himself 2 and 3 times a day.
Traditionally, bottle babies tend to be smaller, so the fact that his mother is a big doe, so I don't want another cream colored buck or another light colored one. So, Kathy says bucks are so stinky. You know what? We don't really have trouble with our bucks. So they do get during the rut. So yes. Late August, they do start getting a little man funky. And then we usually start breeding in October. So we put our does straight in with the bucks. And then as soon as you can pretty much tell when all the does on the farm have been settled because the bucks come out of rut. So we've had them come out of rut by November on multiple years.
Yeah.
So it's not so bad. And then you've got a little residual funk. The one year we had a buck that we had not been breeding with yet. He was really kind of flighty, and because of that, he ended up going bye-bye. He was actually marking and peeing on the dog, which is what got one of the LGDs moved out of the buck pen because the dog was yellow. And the dog stunk worse than the goats did, and that was not going to work.
Yeah.
So we don't keep an LGD with the breeding bucks anymore because when they hit the rut, they start marking the dog too, and that's bad because the dog wants to love on you. The bucks are kind of doing their little buck thing and clashing and trying to prove they're the man, but oh my God, when the dog started smelling like a ruddy goat, it was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, because he wants hugs and kisses every day. Just like, oh no.
He was so gross.
Yeah.
So gross.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand to be near him. It was just 150 pounds of smell. So, yeah. I saw a comment come in, but I can't read over him.
Oh, yeah. Oh. No, Kathy's just saying, so they only stink when they're in rut. I've only seen them at my friends, and they always stink to high heaven. Yeah, I mean, ours... They're gross in the rut, and that's normal. But like if you go out there right now, they don't smell. They don't smell. I mean, they smell like a goat, but everybody smells like a goat. It's a goat barn.
Some bucks will like almost perpetually rut and spray themselves with pee like all the time. Somebody in my family had one when I was a kid that always freaking smelled.
Yeah.
And he peed on himself all the time. But no, for the most part, our bucks, we've never had problems with them. And we've had some different bucks. We had some boar crosses.
Yeah.
The Nubian, we've got the Kinder buck now. We've got the Nigerian bucks. And we don't have any problems with that. And we actually keep our boys together and don't have rutting issues.
There's 5 males in there right now together. And they're in a pen. They're in a pasture that has, 6, 7 does directly next to it, sort of for the fence line, and they have all their babies. And the boys aren't territorial enough. The babies run through. I mean, they just run the neighborhood essentially. Right now, they can go through the fence. They go in with the LGD. They stand on him. They do the same thing. They go stand on all the bucks, and they use them as toys and
Yeah, no, and I saw Elijah said September, November for my bucks. Yeah, we when we were in Mississippi, our boys didn't start trying to rut until September. But for some reason, since we've moved here,
Yeah.
we've had it now 3 years in a row where they've started in August. It's usually late August, but
Right.
yeah, usually for us it's August. So, which is aggravating only because I don't breed until at least October, November. And like I said, the sooner you can get them in with does, the sooner they stop all that malarkey.
Yeah.
And because of that, we tend to be pretty warm in September, so they start it in August, and they just
You can smell them from the house, and it's 300 feet
yeah,
or more
you can
away.
smell them. When it's warm in September, you almost can't open the windows on the house because all you'll do is get that buck scent in the house.
Well, and their pasture can come down within 100 feet of the house, probably. So.
Kathy says, "Can you just have one buck and doe?" No, don't do that. One, he'll try and rebreed her as soon as she kids, but they don't always get along real well. What you're better off doing is having two does and a buck with a wether that you can separate off.
Yeah.
That's the better way to do it. So at bare minimum, you can get by with having four. My personal feeling on it is if I'm not going to have at least 5 does, I wouldn't keep a buck at all. There's a lot of people that will rent bucks or loan you a buck. That's far better because bucks they are hard on fences.
They are.
Whether they are horned or dehorned. And that's, believe it or not, our Nigerians are way tougher on the fences than our Nubian ever was. He never got pushy with anything until the rut, and that was usually him rubbing things. Our Kinder is not pushy, doesn't tear anything up, but the Nigerians think they got to mark everything. So they rub horns, scratch on things, rub the fences. They're way worse.
Yeah, those are the guys you walk out there and you can hear banging.
Oh yeah.
At feed time, and it's them just ramming their head against the wall, just.
Yeah, trying to prove that they're kind of pain in the that they're the man because they're the littlest, so they like to try and show off and pretend that they're tougher than they are. But yeah, I really wouldn't if I had 5 less than 5 does I would rent a buck. Yeah. Or there are people starting to do artificial insemination in some areas. I would look into that, and just because like I said, you need the second pin. A buck on his own needs a buddy, so then you've got a wether, and they tear the fences up really bad.
Yeah, I mean, for 10 months of the year,
they're useless.
I mean, if you have like great pastures and you really don't have to feed them 10 months out of the year to keep them around till that 2 months you do need them, it's just a lot of extra cost. I mean, if we had great pastures, it wouldn't bother you, but while they will graze, we still feed them year round around here because we don't have a lot of great pasture.
Yeah, which hopefully is getting ready to change.
It'll change.
But yeah, but we do. We feed them year round, and we have enough does to support the fact that we have 4 breeding bucks right now. We lost Freud, so we're actually down to 3 breeding bucks. Yeah, we're down to 3
breeding bucks and two boys that we're just growing them out to see how they turn out. Really.
Yeah, one is my Kinder from last year that had the broken jaw, so he looks dumb. The other one is part of my Homestead goat project, so I need to see how he grows out to see if I'm on the right track or if I'm wasting my time, unfortunately. So anyway.
Elijah's just got a great mix of animals. 3 does with an old sheep and a donkey. The buck is in a pen with a pig, and that's all the company he needs.
Yeah, a pig works.
Yeah.
I've heard of people using donkeys. You can use all kinds of stuff to keep them buddies. They just need companionship. I guess that's the thing I should have said rather than they've got to have a wether. They just need a companion.
Yeah.
They do better, like, there was a guy in Mississippi that we knew, or I knew that tried to keep a goat with a ram, a buck goat, and it didn't work. He ended up losing his goat because goats tend to come up on the rear feet when they're clashing heads, and the ram went forward and hit him, and ruptured something in his abdomen. It was kind of a sad deal. So
Yeah.
I did learn that lesson. If you've got rams and you've got bucks, you probably need to keep them separated. I guess there's not usually a lot of problem with the does, but does and ewes. We're gonna find out most likely. Or I don't plan to keep any of the sheep with the goats, but that nutritional needs are different for the two of them. But
Yeah.
So yeah, one little update on that. The friend that is going to hopefully be moving out here in October went and looked at some Icelandic sheep. She's just trying to figure out logistically where to put them. She's not real big on the idea of bringing them here because she won't be here until October. So she doesn't want them to. She knows that we don't have time to work with them is the big thing. So at least she's, not like, hey, buddy, want to train the sheep? So she's trying to figure out if a coworker of hers has land for rent or what she can do there. So we're kind of waiting that through. They look cute. I swore that when the llamas are gone, I will never again own anything that has to be shorn. For my years of having like 20 and 25 llamas that would have to be shorn every year, just not real big on that anymore. So doesn't excite me, but my friend's very excited about it. So we'll kind of see how that works. I don't have to shear them, so I don't care.
I feel like in the last year, our opinion on maintenance has drastically changed.
Well, part of that is I saw an article today, and it, how sometimes you don't think of yourself in terms of boxes. I was reading an article today, and it was talking about people in middle age, and it wasn't until I saw the words 40 to 55 that I went, oh my God, that's me!
Oh, is that where you said that? Or you said that earlier? You're like, I just realized I'm middle aged.
Yes.
And I just thought,
yes.
It's like, why did you think you weren't?
I don't know, because I don't think of myself as an age. But I'm telling you, when I saw the words middle-aged and realized I was 42, a light bulb went off or flickered or whatever it was. And so now I'm feeling a little stressed.
Oh, okay.
About the middle-age thing.
Okay, I mean, I guess I've been there for years.
Yeah, well,
that's one of my biggest complaints is I'm middle-aged.
But as you get older, you start thinking about how do I maintain this forever?
Did you just wake up?
So it's just kind of one of those things. So yeah, I don't want to shear, and I don't want a lot of foot trimming, and
Thank you.
I would love to have Angoras, but I don't want to deal with half the cage cleaning part of things, burning the hair off. So yeah, I mean, that is something, and I think part of it is we've done this long enough now to know that there is so much other stuff to do that if I can eliminate some maintenance, I'm going to.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, in the last week I decided I'm going to sell every car I own and only get one because of maintenance. And I'm tired of having to fix and build stuff.
I was trying to see what Kathy said.
Yeah, Kathy, you're middle-aged according to that article. 40.
Yeah, that's what it said.
40 to 55.
40 to 55.
Well, I think 55 is considered the golden years now. I don't know what the age
I don't know.
I thought it was 65 and up was the golden years, and there's 55 to 65. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd call 55 to 65, because 65 is a senior, at least from every place in town that I see a discount code for.
Well, you get a senior discount at 55, so maybe it's 55 to 65 is senior, and 65 and up is
I just
the
know
golden years.
It distressed me today.
Oh.
So Kathy did say, I feel like I will probably stick with adding rabbits this year and maybe goats next. One new thing a year, that's all this girl can handle. That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah, we said that for a long time.
Yeah.
Only do one new thing every year.
Yeah, and it's really, whenever we've done talks with other homesteaders, that's always what they say is like one of the biggest things that cause homesteader burnout in newbies is trying to do too much too soon. And I'll tell you, I'm keeping an eye on this friend of mine because I think this is what's going to happen to her. She's been handed the keys to the kingdom and been told, look, you pay for it, you can have it. And so I feel like she's been feeling me out on a lot of stuff because she was like, well, yeah, I was going to talk to you about that. Maybe I'm going to do a different rabbit breed because she and I met doing Harlequins. And I said, yeah, I don't I don't care. I mean, I'm not paying for it. Do what you want. I just need to know, do I need to make a spot? We're talking about building another little barn. Do I need to make a spot in there for hanging cages? So you need to get me measurements so I know how big what we're doing. And then now she's talking about doing quail again. She's talking about doing ducks, which I swore I'll never do ducks in the high desert again. It's just too hard to keep them in water. But she wants to do them. I'm like, fine. Now there's talk of getting another dog. And I'm just like, oh, you are going to burn yourself out. I can already see this coming of between my stuff and the things that she's being hired to help with.
Yeah.
I think she's going to be like completely overwhelmed and overworked. And that's not my problem. She'll learn, right? She's 30. She'll learn. I do like that Kathy said pouring more wine. You know, I'm not a wine drinker. I feel like everybody around me is, and I can't get into it. Elijah said my friend offered me some Coturnix, and while I would like to get back into them, I think I will pass. You know, I'm really enjoying them, and I'm thinking more and more all the time, especially as we're looking at downsizing. I've actually decided to cut a couple of my breeds out of the chickens. So we've done Dominiques because they're a heritage breed. I can't get them to sell where we are for nothing because people know what a barred rock is, but they don't know what a Dominique is half the time. So I've decided we're going to cull all of them this fall. My blue Wyandottes, which are getting older, and I'm just going to keep a younger set of Americanas, my golden lace, my silver lace, and my red lace blue. And if I hatch some blue Wyandottes, I may keep a couple of them around. Because the Coturnix are awesome. These quail are awesome. They just, yes, the eggs are like itty bitty tiny. And really, I've got like 3 girls now throwing double yolkers, so the eggs aren't that small. But I finally invested in some quail scissors.
Yep.
So they work pretty good. The nice thing about the quail is, like, in 8 to 10 weeks, they're ready for butcher, and I don't need help. Like, with the chickens, usually I get help, and we do them together because they're bigger and they take longer. But I can knock out 8 quail in, like, half an hour, 45 minutes, all by myself. Done, in the freezer they go, and I'm finished.
I mean, we have roosters that have been on the butcher block
for months.
I mean, they're months beyond where we were because of everything that's happened and all the projects. And it's, you know, there again, we were supposed to butcher yesterday. And then
so windy.
It was so windy. And then we were going to do it over the weekend. And then something else happened. And then now they're scheduled for Saturday. And, you know, every night before butcher day, I go in there and tell them, okay, I'm not feeding you tonight. You know why? Because tomorrow's butcher day. And I think that now they all just look at me and just walk away like, you've sold us that like 12 times.
Boy, aren't they going to be shocked when we start pulling.
Yeah, exactly. But
that's another thing that needs to happen. And
yeah,
that's another thing that I'm looking at is how many roosters need to live here.
Yeah.
You know, I try and do some purebred stuff, but there are some boys that are going to have to go just because.
I don't know. The demand on stuff this year has just burned me out personally of trying to keep all the stuff and keep it separated. And,
yeah,
you know, especially when we've been hatching, you label the eggs of what they are because, you know, all brown eggs essentially start looking the same. You label them what they are, by what date, and then you've got to keep them all separated so that when she pulls out for the hatch, you don't always put in the same ones, and so you've got to have a good mix of them, and it's just a hassle. And in this year, I mean, we walked through Coastal today when we got the pens or the fencing, and every pen in there of chickens, you can tell that they are way older
weeks.
They're weeks old in there, and at some point they're just going to start fire selling these things out.
Yeah.
They're going to practically give them away for a loss just to get rid of them because they're feeding them. And
I'm kind of surprised they haven't already.
Well, it's hard, especially when that they've got chicks, and we're trying to hatch to compete with the big box stores, and eventually they're going to sell them all out, and we get stuck with what we have. Same with the turkeys, and we went in, we stopped trying to sell eggs to people other than our hip campers because it was a race to the bottom. We went in today on the bulletin board, like Nikki said, it was fuller than it's probably been ever that we've seen in 6 or 7 years. And I think there were at least 4 eggs for sale ads in there.
Down to $1.50 a dozen. That's how desperate some of these people are. And I think it's people who bought last year and way
probably
overdid it.
They probably had they probably have 15 hens or something, and they're getting 10 eggs a day, and eventually I know somebody I know that did that really went chicken heavy, and when they did it I thought this is going to end so badly because once these chickens start laying and really get into their cycle, they're going to be covered up with eggs so fast. And I think like a month ago the person had put on Facebook that half of their fridge was nothing but eggs. They had like 36 dozen eggs in their fridge, and they couldn't get rid of them.
Yeah.
They couldn't sell them fast enough. Like they were just hoping these chickens would eventually stop laying, and it's like not for months.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do with them. Nikki started doing lime water for the eggs this year so that they are stored, and we'll have them in the winter. So we'll have fresh eggs in the winter. We, of course, make them into scrambled eggs for the dogs. And Liza, you're hitting the tripod with your tail.
I was like, wait, are we having an earthquake?
Yes, collie butt. Can you sit?
Can
you sit?
So yeah, Kathy said if you steam the eggs, they're easy to peel. I still boil mine like I always have, but I did the whole thing where you crack them, put them in a plastic container with some water, and shake them. Yeah. And they pretty much peel themselves super easy.
Yeah.
I haven't pickled my quail eggs. Kanan's not a big pickled egg fan.
Yeah, I don't like them that much.
I think I'm going to start doing some again. I liked them, but a full-size egg is a lot for me.
Yeah.
But a little pickled quail egg may be okay. I may try some. In my quail group, I see a ton of people doing it. So thinking I may get back into that. Keto Cutie said finding motivation to butcher is such a pain.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially birds. That's our bigger problem. Like, if I come to him and I say, I need 12 rabbits taken care of, we go cage to cooler in 6 minutes on a rabbit.
Yeah.
At the best we can do, it's 15 minutes on a chicken, and that's with the plucker.
Yeah.
So it's such a longer thing, and chickens stink, and I hate the smell of the wet feathers, and I hate pulling feathers. Yeah, there's a whole thing there. So yeah, I'm with you. Finding the motivation to do it is just awful. Green Tiger Freak said Muscovy ducks for sure. Mine weren't in the water like my runners were. And I know people who raise Muscovies. I just I always wanted some, and kind of where I'm at with it right now is I'm trying to downsize across the board, and if we add stuff in later, that's fine.
Yeah, we still have all our duck pens and everything's out there for adding ducks back in, and if our new third wheel coming on the property wants ducks.
Third wheel.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start calling her that. Third wheel.
Yeah. We'll have everything available, so she could put ducks out there very quickly.
And Elijah says the quail are awesome, but my brother's using my old quail cages to brood banny chicks, and I don't feel like building new ones. I don't blame you. I hate building cages. Let's see. Kathy says I've been telling the family we're definitely going to have to lower our chicken flock. Feed prices are outrageous, and it's not going to get better. You are correct. And Green Tiger Freak says start raising mealworms. We've started doing that. I'm not doing the greatest at it because I kind of got behind. I need to separate and do stuff. Keto Cutie says there isn't any money in eggs. I'm giving mine away. I didn't even try to sell some. I've had some people ask me about turkey eggs. When I started doing quail, a ton of people were like, "Oh, we want to buy quail eggs," and then I put them up for sale and nothing, which sucks because I bought some really cute little quail egg cartons. But whatever,
Yeah.
I've got them.
You know, we I'm gonna say that we added, or Nikki added this year to our hip camp, an adventure pack for eggs, and normally you could have um, 6 chicken eggs or a half dozen chicken eggs, or there's the adventure pack, and it's been I've been like pretty happy and surprised that it's been so popular. You get 2 turkey eggs, 2 chicken eggs, and of course we add in we make sure there's one Americana, so it's green, and then you have one brown egg in there, and then 4 quail eggs. And I tell you what, people have been like really overexcited on this. Because
It's different.
you can't get this stuff in the grocery store. You can't go in there and buy turkey eggs to eat. You can't buy quail eggs typically. So it's I think it's been more popular or as popular as just regular chicken eggs. And
Yeah.
And there we list them as farm fresh chicken eggs. So we try to mix in the colors.
Yeah, we'll get campers that come if they're staying for very long. They usually get half a dozen chicken eggs, and then once they've decided our chicken eggs are okay, then they like, oh, before we leave, can we get one of those 6-pack of adventure eggs?
Mm-hmm.
Like then they trust me, I guess.
Yeah.
So Elijah said he does Barred Rocks, Americanas, and Californians for production. Not doing Californians anymore. Got the chocolates, but lost the Toms, so no Pults this year. While I'm raising a replacement. I hope your chocolates are better than ours. Our Toms are awful, awful, and we knew they might be because they were kind of developed. Well, the bourbon red is actually developed from the chocolate, so and bourbon reds are awful. I like the looks of them. I'm not gonna say I don't, and I like how big and meaty they are. But Kanan hates them. They find him every single night. And then he said his other breeds are for exhibition. Kathy says, try steaming. I promise it's amazing and a game changer. I'm lazy. I'd like to just throw them in and walk away. I may try it, though. Let's see. Okay. Keto Cutie, I do all the butchering myself. I'm finally quick enough to get in there when the heart is still beating. When I first started, it was 45 per rabbit. That's about where my friend is, so she's got a lot of learning to do.
Yeah.
I'm cutting down my rabbit herd too, selling my pet line off, which is sad because they're cute but aren't worth the feed, not worth it even for the colorful kids. We got out of pets way early.
Yeah.
One, it just leads to
oh no.
It leads to a lot of confusion. You're either a pet breeder, a show breeder, or a meat breeder. Show breeders and meat breeders can be the same, but yeah, I don't like to blur that line of pets. Rabbits were developed for meat. I like to leave them at that. Yeah, they're cute, but when we first started, I did some small stuff, and that's what we were doing in Mississippi. We were going to sell pets. And then I realized when I really sat down and crunched the numbers, you can't make it pay. Yeah. Like, you can pay your feed back, but you can't ever recoup your cage costs, and you can't ever recoup your time. And that was a deal breaker.
Yeah, and that's I think that's something I focused a lot on this year, and I think Nikki's tired of me mentioning it, especially when people are like, "How do you make money on the homestead?" And it's like, don't ask about making money. How do you make profit? Because I have seen people, I see it everywhere, that as long as people get in this mindset that, well, I don't have to pay myself anything. If I can just make my money back in feed or whatever it is, that you don't have to pay yourself in time. And it's like, why? And here's a good example. So our neighbor had crops last year, and they were for profit. And
you can say it's hemp.
It's hemp. So he grew last year, and they really struggled. It was his first year trying to grow in this climate, and he's from Northern California, where the climate is much different. It's a lot easier to grow down there. So he put in facilities for it last year. Didn't realize how cold it was a lot of the year. He didn't realize how cold it was so early in the year for us. I mean, for us, we can have snow by Halloween, and it will freeze or frost almost every month of the year, including July and August, which he just could not believe that can actually happen. So he had to, he had one big greenhouse last year, and they for a lot of the year had to run propane heaters to try and keep everything warm enough from freezing and frosting. They made profit last year, but they invested. Let's see percentage. They basically made about 16% profit for a full year of work.
Yeah.
For like 9 or 10 months, and I mean, this is somebody. He had an employee here all year long. He rotated people in and out because he has farms elsewhere, so he just had employees that would come up here. They don't have cabins, or I think they have an RV back there to sleep in, but they didn't make a lot of profit last year. They covered their expenses, but they barely made enough profit. And when I talked to him, like a week ago or whatever it was, he had just said he may not do it again after this year. He said it's really they didn't do very well last year, so he changed up some of the things he's doing this year to grow hemp, and he just said it's not looking good for him this year on that piece of property. He said it's just a really difficult piece of property to grow hemp on.
It's a really difficult area to grow hemp in.
Yeah. Everybody we saw last year or a couple years ago, when kind of everybody rushed into hemp to do it, 2 years ago?
3 now, I think.
3 years ago. But a lot of people rushed in and bought in big because it was the next big thing, and they wanted to get on the front end. And there was a farm down the way that I think planted 4 or 5 acres of hemp, and they didn't realize it was not going to be frost tolerant, and they lost every bit of it.
About 3 weeks to harvest, even.
Yeah, 3 weeks to harvest.
We got a good summer, and so they kept it alive all summer, and then we got an early frost, and it was just
so it became like animal feed, and it was essentially worthless.
I think they just mowed it down. It was terrible.
Yeah.
So Kathy asked, "What is your number one meat rabbit if you could only have one?" Okay, so there's 2 ways to go about this. You can ask the question of what is the best rabbit for meat, or what is the best meat rabbit on the homestead. And there is a wild difference. If you are just looking for meat production, the best you can get, as much as I hate these animals, is the New Zealand. And it's got to be a well-bred New Zealand, and that's the trick, is you've got to find a really good New Zealand breeder, because they are not the animals that they were 20 years ago. They still grow the best. They still pack on the most meat. Temperament sucks. And they are not the best mothers. They are extremely high strung. And their litter sizes, every generation, are getting smaller. I don't know a single New Zealand breeder that can consistently get over 8 anymore. On the flip side of that, the best overall for the homestead, there's a video on this, even. The American. You cannot go wrong with them. The biggest problem that you have with the American is that they're hard to come by. Luckily, being in Oregon, one of the best American breeders on the West Coast, or maybe I should say one of the only, is me. Love them. They're as big. Actually, my lines tend to be bigger. My Americans a lot of time will go 12, 14, where they really need to be 10 to 12 in size. My litter sizes are bigger. My growth rate's still the same. But the temperaments are way better, because I cannot deal with awful temperaments. So yeah, there's 2 answers to it. I would never own a New Zealand again if I can help it. If I were going to do them, I would go with some of the Brokens are pretty decent. The Reds probably have the best personality, but they are also not the meat animals that the whites are. And I have red-eyed whites in my Americans. I don't mind them. But we raised New Zealands for a while, and I will never own them again. It's just not ever going to happen. Keto Cutie says, I just wanted production from my mini Rex doe. It's impossible to sell anything besides Holland Lops here in North Carolina. I've noticed that. I'm on a bunch of transport groups because I get a lot of people from the East Coast that are trying to get some of my rabbits back east. And yeah, I don't know what the infatuation with Hollands are. I can't stand them. Well, I had one. He was very sweet. They have a lot of breeding problems. They have a lot of genetic issues. I can't stand them. I can't stand them. Green Tiger Freak says we're having a problem in my area of Missouri of people buying up pedigreed rabbits for 125 plus and thinking they're going to breed a bunch and turn around and sell babies for 125 plus, not knowing the standard. That's normal. It comes and it goes.
That isn't anything.
Yeah. Well, we see the same thing in the kinder goats. Like the prices tend to go $300 to $400. So people are trying to sell every single animal that comes out,
Yeah.
and there was I'm on a couple of kinder goat groups, and several people on the board have just come out and said, guys, really, we have a standard. It's on the website. Please stop doing this because we're basically ruining this breed. You got to remember, kinders are only like 5 generations in for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes 6, but it's a relatively young breed.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you aren't culling hard enough for the right stuff, you still get a lot of that really heavy dairy influence or that really heavy pygmy goat influence, and we're supposed to be a true dual purpose. So just let them fizzle out. They will eventually. The big thing is when they realize that they can't get 125 for every crap rabbit that they produce, they'll stop doing it. Because that's what we saw in the Chihuahua phase. Remember the Yokiro Taco Bell?
Yeah.
I had an aunt who was breeding Chihuahuas during that nonsense. It works itself out eventually. It gets really frustrating for those of us that are doing the right thing for a while. Just hold the course.
Yeah, but we've seen that in Harlequins too, that as the price has gone up in the last 6 years, let's say, they were 6 years ago a lot of times a $10 to $15 rabbit. Now you get some in there that are 75 to 150 on the really high end, good lines, good production, and you get people that will get into the breed. They don't have a standard. They just know that was an expensive rabbit, so it's clearly gonna turn out expensive rabbits. It's based on markings, and I'm not on the boards or the groups that Nikki is, and I mean, but she'll come in and she'll just hand me a phone and say, "Look at these, they're all for sale," and I'll go, "Man, that is the most expensive food I've ever seen." Those are crockpot rabbits.
And I'm hypercritical too, which doesn't help.
Well, you're president of the club, so you got to be. But yeah. I am a stickler for markings. I'm kind of the litmus test, if you will. Nikki will, even in stuff here, I don't have the same. I guess I have a more objective eye in a lot of cases. I don't know these rabbits in and out. I don't have the history. I don't have the sentiment for them. She'll ask me just to come in and be like, look through this one or look at this one in particular. What do you think? And I'll in my mind go through the standard and be like, well, you've got this going for it, but you're going to have these 3 things that it's not there. That's a mid-pack rabbit. If it's going to produce well, fine, but
he's not always right either.
Yeah, well... And there's some times that I pick out a rabbit that she doesn't like at all, and it wins the show. So
that happened to me a few years ago. We picked out 2 different chocolate bucks, and by points, his would beat mine over and over again. But it was brindled. He was terrible, and I ended up butchering his rabbit. We ended up butchering my rabbit too. But
yeah,
they we did better.
Collie-quake.
Collie-quake. Yeah, so it happens. He's got one outside right now that I can't stand, but got nice type and fair marking, so he's saying. So Kathy says, I don't want to have an animal if it's going to be a butthead. Well, that's 99% of animals anyway. But no, seriously, I don't recommend New Zealand's to people starting because what I see happen to a lot of people that start in New Zealand, they get out of rabbits and they never raise them again because they're horrible. They're just horrible.
Yeah.
So we do have a question. Jermaine said, "Hi, when do you rebreed your rabbits? Do you rest them after weaning?" It's depends. Depends a lot. It depends on what the weather is. If it's summer and it's getting really hot, I usually will give them a break. If it's fair weather and I can keep them going, and it's a young enough doe, I will rebreed her usually within a week of weaning her kits. I like to keep mine going. But yeah, for the most part, we'll rebreed right back. It doesn't usually hurt them. In fact, Liza, stop. The bigger thing, would you adjust that? We're starting to. Now I derailed my train of thought, and then she hit it with her behind anyway. But yeah, I'll just go ahead and rebreed them. The bigger problem that you have in does is not breeding them, and then they start to build up internal fat, and that does take some time, and that's usually the result of not good feed management. But I would just go ahead and rebreed them. Ingrid says, I have New Zealand Californians and they consistently have 11 to 13 kits kindled, market weight between 8 to 10 weeks and rarely lose any. Am I just lucky? Been breeding them for me for 5 years now. Yes. You probably have really old lines. Show lines anymore don't do that. Doesn't happen. Even the breed associations for California and New Zealand now tell you that the average litter size is 8. And I've known people, in fact, we used to have a guy that would argue with me on almost every rabbit video that everything I said was bubkiss because he raised both cows and New Zealands for years and never could get a litter over 5. Remember that guy?
Yes. Over
and over and over again. And I kept telling him, you've got bad lines. And he would not listen to me. They're great rabbits. They're great rabbits. No, they weren't. But yeah, that was the old standard. They should have been hitting it between 8 and 10, and you should have consistently. The old listing was that they would have 10 to 12, but they don't do that anymore. So yeah, I would say you've just got good lines, or have been really lucky. Would be my guess.
I don't know. For 5 years of consistency, I'd go with the good lines. I wouldn't call it luck anymore.
No,
maybe you were lucky when you bought them.
Yeah.
That you actually bought some really good lines and didn't know it yet. You hadn't proved it out, but after 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
I think you've got really good lines that are going to be very consistent.
Or very dominant lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They just don't do that anymore. It's unfortunate, and that's because of breeding. The show breeders have tightened up to get this really over exaggerated depth. And when they did that, they shortened up the body, and there's just no place to put those kits. It's just kind of the way it is. Kathy says, dinner's done. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for coming, Kathy.
We're about ready to.
Yeah, we've got to go too. Green Tiger Freak says, I find it funny that the New Zealand cows are low litter size, and I've had lion does who throw a 10 in a litter and raise them all. I've had Triantas do the same thing. That's an exception, not a rule. Usually with the little rabbits, they tell you 5 is pretty average. My New Zealand Black has never had over 8, and Silver Fox doe had 11 last litter. Yeah, the Silver Fox, any of the old-timey breeds, a lot of times will have big litters. It was just kind of the way things worked. But yeah, it is. The New Zealand's officially from the association say that their average size is now 8. So, all right, guys. Well, it is 7 o'clock. Oh, I touched something. It is 7 o'clock. We have chores to do. We gotta
get fencing unloaded so I can go get solar batteries tomorrow.
Yes. So we're gonna call it there. If you guys have other questions, anything like that, you can always send me an email at srhomestead@yahoo.com. Hit us up on Instagram, Facebook. You know the drill at this point, I'm sure.
We're everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah.
We are, at least.
You can always leave me comments on videos. I'm mostly caught up. I've got a few more. I got really far behind when we were sick, but I'm mostly caught up. So that is it for tonight. And what else we got coming out this week? Maybe a video later this weekend.
It depends. I would like to do a video on Thank you.
It was not us. It was the
Jeez. She's such a lady. I would like to do a solar battery video of us changing out the batteries, and hopefully that is going to be Friday. I don't know that I'm going to get it tomorrow because I have to get the batteries home, offloaded into the garage, get them prepped to go in, and then I have to get everything set up. So I hope to do that Friday after I get off work to get everything transferred over, the new batteries in, commissioned, and then potentially have everything filmed along the way. So hopefully I can do that and maybe have that out. Sorry, Sunday. If I can get that filmed, edited, uploaded overnight, and then I can get that out. So, and then I'll probably have to do a video of what's the best battery to buy, and I'll probably do that at the same time, film that at the same time, because that's not dependent upon the installation. That's just a kind of an informational video.
Okay, so solar videos coming. I've got some other stuff too, but that is it for tonight. Happy homesteading, everybody. Thank you for watching, and hit the button, buddy.
See you next time.